Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to show you how I make sourdough chocolate chip cookies. Now, sourdough is getting a big name out there, and rightfully so, because it is better for you. It is taking the flour that you normally include in baking and it is fermenting it over time, generally either in the fridge or on your countertop, which will make it ferment quicker. And it is better for you because the grains that you're normally eating in breads or cakes or cookies is flour that has not had a time to break apart. Another way to say that is the grain kernel has a lot of nutrients in it, but it needs a process that breaks the kernel apart and releases the nutrients so that you can receive it. And the way that that happens is through sourdough. Now, sourdough comes from ages ago. That's how they used to make bread in the olden days. Someone left flour and water out on the counter, which over time became active, started bubbling, and basically grabbed yeast from the air and became alive. And somehow they figured out that that can turn into bread if baked. Now we've lost touch with this fermentation process because we've replaced it with instant yeast. And while that really gets into bread making, and we're making cookies today, but it's good that we're adding sourdough to this cookie mix because it is gonna eat away at those grains in the flour and, well, make it better and more ready for your body to consume by the time that you're eating this cookie. So let me show you how we do that. Now the first thing you want to do before you start making this recipe is feed your sourdough starter. Basically, this is a little animal and it needs food in order to keep growing. I don't remember the last time I fed this because it's been sitting in my fridge because I haven't baked for the past week. So it's sort of been in a dormant phase. And so now I'm going to get rid of most of it and feed it only the flour and water that it needs to continue, livening up a bit. Then I'm gonna leave it for a few hours, and then I'm gonna come back and mix the rest of the recipe with the fed sourdough starter, and that way it's active and alive to get busy eating away at those grains and getting it ready for us. Now, an important thing to tell you right off the bat is that it's gonna take a couple of days to make these cookies. I know everybody says the "aww" big moment. I used to just think that it was silly that people would expect you to think in advance, like let's say 3 days to bake cookies for 3 days from now. That just seems bonkers to me. But I think once you get on the train of this healthier method of having goods, you just sort of don't mind the process. So I've gotten into the rhythm of that, and I think it is well worth it to plan in advance and make these sourdough cookies. So to give you a timeline, you're gonna need about 4 days until you're gonna eat these cookies. You'll need a day to feed your sourdough starter, and then you're gonna mix it. Then you'll need 3 days for this cookie dough to ferment in your fridge. So altogether, you're only gonna bake it on the 4th day. All right, let's get started. Okay, now in order to feed the sourdough starter, the way I usually feed my sourdough starter for my bread is that I get rid of nearly everything that I have, which seems very little for this big bowl. Long story. Now, when I started keeping a sourdough starter, I measured how much this bowl weighed so that I could always use my volume measure. Is this what it's called? I'm not sure. Volume scale, let's say. I really need to get the name of that. So I can always use my volume scale to measure the weight of my tub and then whatever the content is inside. So I'm gonna get rid of everything except for 50 milliliters. So the rest that I'm getting rid of, I'm keeping in my fridge because you can throw away your sourdough starter, but I like to keep it in the fridge because maybe I'll make some pancakes with it over the weekend or some crackers. I'll link the recipe to my sourdough crackers down below if you want to check that out. It's a good use for sourdough discard. But yeah, and then after a while, if I've got lots of sourdough discard in the fridge, I'll just throw that out, but I like to keep it just in case. So let's get rid of some. There is, just to give you a little bit of picture. Maybe I'll do this. It's actually surprising how much you can get rid of, because the culture is in this bowl, so it will carry over no matter how little you have left afterwards. It's always quite amazing, but I'm getting rid of most of it because the smaller I can keep it, the less I have to feed it, and I'm not trying to waste a lot of flour to feed my sourdough starter. So the smaller the animal, the less it eats. So the more I throw away, the less I have to feed. Okay, that's about right there. Now to feed this sourdough starter, I'm going to add 200 milliliters of white flour and 50 milliliters of whole wheat flour, as well as 200 milliliters of lukewarm water. If you want to get technical, I think it's about 90 to 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Fahrenheit? Celsius? I'm not sure. I'll put it below. So I zeroed my scale, and let's measure. The lukewarm water. And then I'm just going to mix it with my hand. Alright, and that's what mine looks like afterwards. It's still kind of sticky, not as liquidy as maybe you see some starters. And there's different hydration levels, so some will be more watery and some will be less watery. And mine is more like this because I bake bread often. So my bread recipe calls for a less liquidy starter than most. And then I just use that butter knife to clean off my fingers. And then I'm going to put a lid on this to sit for a couple of hours. Okay, see you in a little. So I'm quickly going to mix up this recipe and show you how I make it. Alright, now it calls for some brown sugar, which I don't usually have, so I'll just take some white sugar and add some molasses and stir that together. So let's start there. Turn on my scale. I don't really know the exact measurement to take white sugar to molasses, how much is necessary to make it brown sugar, so I just add it until I like it, and that's good enough for me. So 1 cup of brown sugar, but remember I'm doing white sugar. So for the molasses, I'll just do a little something like that. And then I'm gonna mix that together with my handy little hand mixer. And if I think it needs more molasses, I'll just add a little bit more. Let's check that out. Now I wonder if you can check this out, but this is kind of what it looks like. That's brown sugary in it for me. And then I'm going to add a little bit of white sugar. I'll link a recipe down below so that you can follow that if you want. And then I'm gonna add the butter to this and mix it again. So I'm just gonna measure what I need. If you don't know the power of working with a, what's this called? A volume scale? Probably not the official name for it, but I used to stuff things into cups and have lots of cups dirty and so on. And it's just so nice to know the volume and keep adding to this one bowl that gets dirty and do it that way. Anyway, I find that's easier. So this butter is softened, so as you can see it's very easy to add in here. And it's gonna mix easy with the sugar. A little more. Okay. Probably need an apron. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put on an apron. At least like this for now. Wash my buttery hands. Okay, back to it. This is what aprons are for. Just wipe my dirty hands. Okay. Mixing the sugar and the butter together. Alright, and my butter is nicely softened, so you can see that that was real easy. Okay, and next I'm going to mix the dry ingredients into a different bowl, and then everything's going to end up in this bowl. So start with the bowl that's going to go in your fridge to ferment for a couple of days. For the dry ingredients, let's start with the... Oh, actually, before we do the dry ingredients, to this we can actually, while this is still dirty, we can add the egg and the vanilla. Alright. Oops, a little bit. Alright, and an egg. Ooh. Apron. To this also I'm going to add my sourdough starter, which I fed about, how many hours ago? Let's see. Could it be 8? Probably not 8, maybe like 6 hours ago. You know, you can, anytime from 6 to 12 hours is good. How I'll know is if I open this and it's kind of smelly. Slightly. This is my sourdough starter. I keep it in this big bucket. I don't know why, but it's easy for me to mix in there with my hands, so I just sort of kept it like that. I don't know why. I'm gonna wet my hand before I start adding some to this, because it's just easier so it doesn't stick to my hand. Ooh, that's nice. That was a bit too much. Ooh. Still, gotta take a little more out of here. And we're back, proceeding with the dry ingredients. All-purpose flour. Nice. All right. Okay, so we've got that. We've got the sourdough starter in. A little bit of salt. A teaspoon. So that's so little that it's almost not worth measuring. So something like that. Now this recipe has both baking powder and baking soda in it, which is also interesting. Now the amount it's asking for is so little that, I don't know, my volume scale doesn't really pick it up that well, so I'm just going to use my good old teaspoon. Well, this is half a teaspoon. Baking powder, baking soda, done, and then also some chocolate chips, of course. I don't have very many left, and because clearly we've been making this recipe too much. And also the bit that I have left is a big ball like this. So this will just have to do. I wish I had other chocolate actually today. I do have other chocolate that I could use in its place. Let's see how many ounces this will be. Just too little. Shall I break some other? Yeah, I know you do need. You need chocolate chips and chocolate cookies, okay? You can't shy away. And actually, the amount that this recipe calls for is just the amount that I like, that it's not too much, but it's also not too little where you're wondering where are the chocolate chips in this chocolate chip cookie. So, which is quite important. It's gotta be just right, okay? Give it to the people who already figured it out. Just do what they say, okay? And I know we all have preferences, so it'll change, but this one's good, okay? I can vouch for it. This is the hidden stash. It's not meant to be hidden, but it ended up being hidden because it's in a drawer that it's not normally supposed to be in. Probably from when we went camping and came back and just never put it in its right spot. Does that happen anywhere else? Okay, anyway, I'm just breaking these in pieces until I get the desired weight here. So I'll fast forward this part so that you don't need to sit here and watch me break apart some Lindt chocolate for my chocolate chip cookies. Okay, I think that's where it's going to be. I think I need to turn the light up because I've been standing here baking chocolate chip cookies until the sun goes down. So I'm just going to give this a quick stir. Okay, and now I'm going to, bit by bit, add it to this wet ingredients bowl and mix it. And then I'm just gonna put this right in my fridge to ferment for 3 days or two or three. You do get chocolate chip cookies that sort of taste, they don't taste sour, but you know how sourdough bread tastes? It's got a similar taste to that. Not overpowering, but it does have that taste. So you can experiment with how much you want it to ferment, but there would be obviously a good limit so that you're not just tasting just sourdough, you know? So anyway, you can figure out what that is for you. About 2 to 3 days in the fridge works just right for us. And to the people that I serve these cookies to. And we'll see you in a couple of days when we make some cookies.